Digitel is one of the leading companies helping associations leverage their content through event live streaming, webinars, and knowledge distribution. Take advantage of their 32 years of streaming success in generating revenue for their clients than any other company, hands down. For more information on Digitel, go to digitelinc.com.
Are you
10, 9, 8,
Okay,
7,
so we're gonna be Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here are your hosts, BizBash CEO David Adler and Executive Editor Beth Kormanik.
Hi, David.
Hey, Beth. I'm here in California. How are you?
I'm great here in New York. It's our bi-coastal GatherGeeks today, and we are going to hear today from Steve Pastor, who is owner of the custom invitation and paper goods company Alpine Creative. Pastor got his start providing graphic design for Whitney Houston and then eventually moved into the wedding invitation business when he did Eddie Murphy's wedding invitation. Now, the company designs invitations for companies, associations, and social events, including weddings and other celebrations. David, some people might not realize it, but there really has been a lot of evolution in the invitation world.
Absolutely. I mean, when you first heard all of the ideas that digital is going to change everything and print's going to go away, well, that didn't quite happen. Steve and his team really thrived in this supposedly changing environment, but changed with the times.
Absolutely. And I know you like to call these episodes Wisdom Bank episodes. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this is really a wisdom bank because, it's really good for our younger listeners to hear from some of the pros. It will save you so much time. The mistakes that you will not have to experience because you listen to this is an enormous advantage, I think. That's one of the reasons we're doing this.
That's right. So he has a lot of wisdom to share, and let's take a listen.
So Steve, here we are in your showroom. I just experienced your 30th anniversary party. Tell us what it's like to be in the invitation business for 30 years and how it's changed before we get into this master class that we want to do on the invitation world.
Okay, well, David, thank you very much for that. 30 years ago, there were no computers. There was no social media. There was no such thing as email. So we started at a time where everything was hand-drawn on artboards. All communication was done by telephone. It was a totally different world. Typesetting was done on typographic machines. There was no desktop publishing. Apple had not yet developed the Macintosh computers. So the world that we came into was literally hundreds of years apart in terms of technology if you look at previous centuries of how things were done. So that was the biggest difference, is how business was done and how everyone communicated with each other.
So what did the event organizer do when they came in to see you back then? What was the typical interaction at that moment?
In 1987, there was no such terminology as event organizer. The industry really started coalescing as a group probably in the early 1990s and also around the time that BizBash developed.
How did the light bulb go off about wedding invitations and invitations in general? To have this, so we're in this big showroom with hundreds and hundreds of amazing invitations, but this was this is 30 years ago.
We were not printers at that time. We were graphic designers, and we said, okay, let's move from working with celebrities to designing wedding invitations. And we were miserable failures for about a year. What was our aha moment took us a long time to develop into a methodology that actually worked. We just happened to have found the ideal client to begin with, but it was a struggle to define our market. Were we mid-market? Were we low-end? Were we luxury? How do you go about selling the product? How do you go about designing it? And because at that point we were only designers and not printers, we were relying on other people to execute our designs, and a lot of times it wasn't happening properly.
So what was your answer to the question of where you should be?
I guess over a period of time, we decided that we defined our market as being high-end luxury, and that in order to develop that properly, we needed to hire talent. We needed to hire the best graphic designers that we could find, and we also needed to control our own production. So we started very slowly buying equipment and becoming printers ourselves. Actually, my partner, who's a a woman from the deep south. I sent her to print production school. I didn't go. I sent her. She went to night school to learn how to run a printing company. And we started from that point, and we basically built up one machine after another, and through trial and error, we learned what we did. And now people come in here and they say, wow, have you had this business for many generations? Is it a family business? But we built this all from the ground up.
But wedding invitations have been going on forever, and so there's certainly a protocol about those, the engraved invitation and things like that. Did you evolve from that thinking in terms of a new way of thinking about invitations?
Yes, well, myself and a couple of other people in the industry determined that the way wedding invitations had been sold up to that point exclusively was out of invitation books. Everyone has seen these books. Some of them still exist now, but 30 years ago, that was the only way you could buy an invitation, was you opened a book. If you didn't like a book from Cranes, you opened up a book from William Arthur. If you didn't like a book from William Arthur, you opened up a book from another company, from Birchcraft, which was very low end and is now basically just holiday cards. So we, along with a couple of other people in different parts of the United States, started developing custom wedding invitations. And that basically had never been done before. It's like bottling your own ketchup. So that was what we did that was different from...
But was that, did you go against the norms of sort of the people that go to the country club and have been doing the same thing for years and years? Were you disrupting that industry at that point, you think, in retrospect?
I don't know if it was disrupting or if we were really changing it. Because of the fact that we were a boutique niche business, we were looking for people that had a passion for printing and for stationery. And in the past, people that had that passion had to settle. They couldn't get a product like mine because it simply wasn't available.
What did the event organizer, let's go into sort of like when you sort of got your groove, what was your secret sauce? Like what was when the event organizer came into your showroom, what were they asking and what were you delivering? And how did you sort of meet the need for satisfying the industry? It's kind of a tough question.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. What we were able to do was to help them to brand an event. So the invitation basically brought out the theme of the event that they were having, whether it was a wedding, a corporate event, or a nonprofit event. So we were able, instead of them ordering something out of a book that was essentially, different styles but had nothing to do with the theme of what they were planning, we were able to match the theme of the decor to the invitation and essentially give a client a concept from start to finish so that everything was coordinated properly. If they were having a magic garden theme, we could do a magic garden invitation. If they were having a basketball theme, we could do a basketball themed invitation. It could have been anything at all. So that's what we were able to do for the event planner that wasn't available before.
So actually, when you think about it, what you were doing then was what is popular now in the personalization and the branding, so everyone has their own personal brand, but you were doing it before because everybody for their wedding or their corporate event wanted to have that I'm special feeling.
Yes. The only thing that was available for wedding invitations at that time were people made monograms. That was the big thing. That's the only way that they could personalize a wedding invitation was to do a monogram. So we were able to personalize everything else about the wedding, about the invitation, because we were making it from scratch.
Right. And you also had, I remember when I was in college, we were about the same age, and I was using Letraset scratch-on things to create personalization and posters that would resonate in the to get people to notice something. I guess that's what you were happening in the invitation world.
Exactly.
And it was the old-fashioned, you had to put an RSVP, and that's how people responded.
Yeah, it used to be, at one time, the only people that used RSVPs were the very, very wealthy. And you would have a response card that would go to their social secretary, and it literally would be on their desk. And that's how RSVPs first started. So that's I think that's a topic for another conversation. But yes, but it all had response sets to it.
And so at the heyday, before the electronic revolution happened, what was the peak of what you were doing in terms of? You must have had, this is like the number one stop for an event organizer to come and do their invitations.
It was that and event decor, I think, were their two major go-to points. So I would say up until almost up until 9/11, which is about 15, 16 years ago, that was absolutely the peak of. We never saw anything ending or changing in the world, period. And everything obviously did over a couple of years.
And so the process, though, was to come up with a design. And you actually printed here.
Yes.
And what about in the addressing? Go through the process, what it was and what it is now today in terms of the differences.
Well, I think the thing that changed the most from then until now is the fact that there were no computers. So all design was basically done with a stylus. It was totally done by hand, and on an artboard, it almost looked like a scene from Mad Men. It was the same way that ad agencies work. So things got a lot faster and a lot easier in terms of design capabilities once Macs came up. And the interesting thing about designers today is that the younger designers, for the most part, are actually better than older designers because they've grown up with the newer technology, with the programs. They know how to fly with these things. It's sort of like trying to learn a language when you're 60. It's a lot harder than if you're a kid. So the young kids today, when they come out of design school, they're amazing. So that really is the big difference, is how quickly we could come up with designs for clients.
So you probably went through a period where everyone felt, oh my God, everything's going to go electronic. Uh-oh, what's going on with my business? And that happened for a while, and now we're in this sort of state where people are cherishing a printed invitation because of the tactileness and things like that. How did you respond and react to that?
Well, I think when Evites first came out, I was thinking about maybe getting a license to drive a taxi cab or something. I thought that there was a good possibility that we would be outmoded by technology because the entire focus of the world was on Evites. You had all of these different companies that were starting up from Evite to paperless post, even Constant Contact, and it was all that people wanted to do because it was new, it was hip, it was cheap, it was fast, and, everyone was going to try it. The good thing is that it never really affected us with wedding invitations as much as it did with corporate invitations because the mothers of the brides, to the most part, insisted that their daughters use a printed invitation because they wanted to get the actual RSVPs back. They wanted to have them in front of them. They didn't want it electronically. And it's what they grew up with, and that's what they wanted their daughters to have. So for wedding invitations, it never was really that big of an issue, but for every other type of invitation it was.
But has that swung back now?
It's totally swung back. What happened is that at the beginning, if you remember with email, there was no such thing as spam. Everything went into an inbox. You had to look at everything. And then once people started getting spam filters and junk mail and, robo spam and things like that, so many Evites for people, even today, if it comes attached as a PDF, for most computers, it goes into a spam filter. It doesn't go into your inbox unless your email recognizes that address. So it really hasn't hurt us at all. It's almost, a non-factor for us at this point.
So let's sort of go into today. What are the to-dos and what are the takeaways that a modern event organizer needs to know when they come in to see you to do an invitation? What are the things that you see that they're not asking you to do?
Well, there's a couple of things. For us, they need to understand what the lead times are. And so often when we give people a lead time, they ignore it and they just figure, well, we make it here, it doesn't matter. And they are, or if the bride that they're working with isn't really looking at that, she may be focused on her dress, she could be focused on her ring. And we have to constantly remind our clients of how long it takes us first to design and how long it takes us to print. And
what is that? What is the lead time in a corporate event or what's your ideal and then what's the reality?
A lot of the corporate invitations we do, because they're a lot simpler, are a week to 10 days out. A lot of times they're 5 working days. Wedding invitations can take us about 4 weeks to really produce them because they're a lot more complex. There's a lot more details. We do not charge rush fees. We just try to get everything out in time. But a lot of people ignore the lead times that we're telling them, or all of a sudden we get rush calls that we're in a panic and we need something today, just like when we interrupted our podcast so I could take a call that somebody needs somebody printed right now. That's the one thing. The other issue that we have with wedding invitations today that we never had before is that the post office is horrible. They ruin invitations. They are delayed with mailings. We continually get comments from brides that their invitations are destroyed in the mail. The post office has no money, and we all know that. They're hemorrhaging billions of dollars, and they're more interested in delivering milk for Amazon on a Sunday than they are with sending out mail, which is the first thing that they should be doing. So we have constant battles with the post office about getting things to be mailed out properly and also getting it to our clients so that nothing is ruined. Post office has no liability if something is ruined in the mail, none whatsoever.
How about the actual physical address issue? Is that an issue with people mail?
No, only if someone doesn't have a mailbox and we're sending out a large invitation and it doesn't fit, let's say, in a small little mailbox in an apartment building. Only that. But for the most part, what we're recommending people that are getting high quality invitations, if they're in New York now, we're suggesting that they deliver them with a courier service.
Or really hand delivered.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How about in the association in the gala world, especially? Mm-hmm. You're seeing a lot of people who are doing print invitations in the gala for marketing, branding purposes. Yes. How has that changed?
How that has changed is that after the financial collapse in 2008, 2009, the style of the invitations has been toned down a great deal. People are very, very cognizant of an invitation being received that has a look that is too expensive. So if people get something that they think that the nonprofit spent too much money on that invitation, then they are very often turned off by it, do not attend the event, and do not give it money. So it's supposed to be nice looking, it has to be informative, it has to be entertaining. Everybody wants to have a good time when they go to these galas, but it also has to be cost effective. So
So if it's too over the top or elaborate, that's a no-no on the
a major no-no.
Yeah, and have you seen that sort of click in the wrong way?
Yes, twice.
Any horror stories that you can share?
Well, one client that we had, her
cautionary tales, let's say.
Her invitation that we designed was so gorgeous, and this is just when we were first started with nonprofits. It actually was featured in People magazine, and as a result of the backlash from that invitation, she was actually asked to step down from the board of her own charity that she had founded and had other people take it over. So those are the types of things that we've seen. I've also, it wasn't even mine, it's very important with nonprofits that they be designed as a rectangular invitation, not as a square, because squares cost a lot more money to mail than rectangular. And I've seen nonprofits hemorrhaging money because they didn't take the mailing costs into account when they were designing their invitations. So that's a very big thing we mentioned to them. With wedding invitations, it doesn't matter, but with nonprofits, it's a big deal.
And are they why don't you go through a little sense of budget for what should a nonprofit pay? I mean, I know it's across the map, and it may not be exactly comparable in different places. But if you're a nonprofit, you're sitting here listening to this podcast, and you're doing an event invitation in Middle America somewhere, is there sort of a common knowledge in terms of budgets for these kind of things?
So we developed a methodology for nonprofits right around the time of the financial crisis, which was we don't charge anything at all for layout and design for any nonprofit for any reason. That part is free. We are only charging for the print production. We have found, even today, that a lot of nonprofits are spending anywhere from $6,000 to $8,000 for graphic design services for their gala invitations, collateral printing materials, and design of their programs. So we comp that totally. The only thing that they're paying for is print production. And if they're ordering 500 invitation ensembles, an average price per ensemble, depending on the size and the type of envelope they use, is somewhere between $5 and $7 per set. So they should be spending somewhere between $2,500 to $3,500 to print their invitations. That's without the cost of mailing and fulfillment, which is stuffing, sealing, and stamping.
Postage. But the fact that you're vertically integrated makes it so you have the ability to do this where other people that are design firms.
Well, the graphic design firm quite often for a small nonprofit is a higher fee than what we're charging for the print production. So since we're not charging for the design and we've got very good designers on staff here, it's a major savings for the nonprofits. A nonprofit now went from being almost an afterthought for our business to being almost 40% of what we do here. It's become a very big part of our business.
So that must translate into donations and ticket sales and things like that because of the tactile nature of the invitation. You want to expound on that?
We tell people that the most expensive invitation that you can ever send out is the one that no one ever opened. So
that is like a quote. I see.
Yeah, that's my quote. Okay, so. If someone's sending out an invitation that looks like it's in a tacky envelope, it's just got a back flap return address with 2 lines on it. Sometimes it's open, sometimes it's not. Sometimes people think it's junk mail. We like to brand the envelope so it shows the name of the event on the front of the envelope as well as the return address on the back. And we find that helps people both with their response rate for donations as well as for attendance. And if they weren't getting that, they quite frankly wouldn't be using it. So I know that it works.
And so what do you recommend on the response side on the inside of the envelope to create the action item, the actual something that makes them buy or RSVP? Is there sort of a technique that you would share from your wisdom of doing this a lot?
I would say that you have to design the invitation so that it fits the theme of the event. So if somebody is having a music theme, the invitation has to have a music theme to it. If it's, if it's promoting, injured soldiers, there has to be something that speaks to the heart of that person when they're looking at that. It has to match not only the theme of the organization, but the content of what the gala or the event is going to be.
Okay, so if you're setting out to write your invitation, you're at your nonprofit or you're at your corporation, how do you start your invitation? What's the copy? You are cordially invited to? What is the normal protocol of this now?
Well, that's actually pretty easy. There is standard protocol. You can look that up online. We have 1,000 samples here.
And that people following the sample is still the best way to do it? Or is it? Or how creative should you be? Or should you stick to you are cordially invited, or you're invited? I mean, what's the first line?
It depends on how much fun you want to have with it. I mean, I've seen a variety of different things done. The people don't read anymore, so what you write isn't as important as what you print. So it's more,
what you write isn't as important as what you print. That is another quote.
Okay, because, and I'm sure you would agree with it, people don't read today. They scan, but they don't read. So if they open something up and they see that it's visually appealing, they're more interested in that than the content of what it says. Most of the times that we're designing invitations, the copy is the last thing we get. Right now I've got 6 jobs in production that are in the design phase, and we're dealing with the concept of what the invitation is going to look like, and we're just plugging in text that they had used from previous years.
But does the concept include a headline or something like that, or is it more visual? It's all visual.
Sometimes it includes a headline. It could be
any examples that
it could be 125th anniversary for an organization. It could be there's an organization we work with throughout the United States that's a Jewish charity, and they have an event in Bel Air, and they call it the Bel Air Affair, and they play off a music theme with the affair every year. And one year we have dancing violins, and we have fireworks, and we have different things like that. So that's basically how.
So the branding is becoming. I mean, the sort of the key takeaway is that. Sort of the key message is like you would do an ad.
Yes.
In a sense.
It literally is, yeah. Every invitation is branded today.
Yeah.
Everything.
Everything's branded. And then so the rest of it.
Bar mitzvah is branded.
Yeah, everybody, especially the expensive ones.
Yes.
Yeah. Is a theme helps drive the design of the whole event. So
Yes.
you're part of, when you're designing the invitations, are you now part of the theme, or is the theme already coming to you once the invitation is being
We ask them at the
created?
beginning, we say, what is the theme of your event? Who is your decor designer? Quite often we'll collaborate with the decor people of what it is that they are designing, and then we will work off of their concepts, even off of their storyboards, and create invitations that are based on that.
Right. So in ending today, what advice do you give to the up-and-coming event organizer that to do fantastic invitations? And how do you sort of like, you're just getting into the business and you discover Alpine and you come in and you want to ask Steve his advice. What do you tell the new incoming event organizer that will really make them the heroes for their clients?
I would tell them to manage timelines properly. If they manage timelines not only for their invitations, but for all other parts of their project, their clients will love them. If they don't manage the timelines, the clients either will fire them or never use them again. That is absolutely the key. And all of that should be done with communication via email. Whatever they say, it's almost like a law firm, should be memorialized via email, because people don't want to remember what was written. They want to remember what they hear or what they think that they heard.
So another Steve quote.
Yeah, so everything has to be followed up with an email. As per our conversation, we will do the following, and this is the timeline. And if you only have it verbal, can be miscommunication, miscoordination, or people can just decide that they heard what they wanted to hear and that you've got to deliver when they want. So it's got to be in writing.
Last question. Print, electronic. How do you decide that you're going to go do a print invitation if you're traditionally doing an electronic invitation and you're in let's say, a corporate setting?
Okay, so there are uses for electronic. I mean, if you're having a company-wide meeting or a company party and it's just going to different members of that staff, electronic is fine because it's basically done intra-web. It's done within your own server. But once you're going outside of your own server, it's generally better, I think, that if you send out a printed invitation and then you follow it up, if you haven't heard back from people, with an Evite a couple of weeks later.
Do you integrate those two concepts?
Yes, all the
here?
time, yes.
So
Yeah,
you outmanage both sides of the electronic and the print.
Exactly.
Last question for real. Mm-hmm. You're 30 years old in your company. What advice would you give to yourself when you started out knowing what you know today?
I guess the one thing I didn't realize is how passion can turn into either joy or anger, that people are so emote when it comes to invitations, that the people that we work with, it's such an important part of their lives that we either bring them joy or we bring them anger. So you have to keep that in mind with every single project. You want to bring joy to people's lives. You have to succeed on every single project. And if you don't succeed on that project, you have to work backwards and figure out what you have to do to redo it and satisfy them and make them happy.
Thank you on that note.
Okay.
David, you covered a lot of ground in what some people might see as a very narrow topic of invitations. But one thing I found really interesting was sometimes you don't want your invitation to look too expensive. You really have to find the sweet spot between something that is beautifully designed, but maybe not so fancy that it defeats the purpose of your event.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that he's finding a balance. I mean, he's also so vertically integrated that he can actually give you many options for how to do this and do it well. It's just a whole different world now than it was.
It is. And Steve acknowledged the existence of Evites, and, you have to come up with a strategy for when to use them. And it's not like he was clinging to his territory and saying, no, never use them, but use them strategically. You have to be aware of spam filters, or, you can use them as an effective follow-up tool. But when you want to make that impression, having that paper stock invitation is essential.
Yeah, and also I find one of the things I got out of this is that people rally around the creation of an invitation. It forces all of the decisions that you have to make in an event. I mean, you have to actually have the right place, the right date, the right message, and everything else. And all of the different constituencies have to come together to prepare an invitation.
It is. It's a good motivator and tool to focus you on what you're doing at your event. The invitation can also be an experience. And I know Steve creates really tactile 3D invitations, like really interesting things. And it kind of dovetails on one of his points. He said the poor post office is horrible. And so he suggests a courier service for hand delivery. I hadn't heard that before as a strategy. And for some of his more elaborate creations, it definitely makes sense.
It's like the idea of getting a gift in a sense. It's like you get the thrill of opening an envelope. Because, in the old days, we used to get tons of mail. And now we don't get as much mail. So It becomes a fun thing, actually.
Exactly. And it is a gift, and you're excited to open it, and therefore you're excited about the event.
So, Beth, what's going on at BizBash?
David, we are thrilled that our design issue is coming out. And what's more, it's coming out in a totally new way for BizBash magazines. This is a all digital magazine. It's designed to be native to the digital environment. So it will have video and animations. And this is a totally new BizBash, and it's focused on design, which is appropriate because we spent so much time designing it. But what you'll find inside is a really amazing story about the top 40 event designers working in North America today. So these are people who work on the biggest events and maybe some under the radar people too, but we present their beautiful work, and we're so psyched to finally be able to share this with our readers.
Yeah, no, I love the idea that this is a magazine experience in a digital form.
Absolutely.
And it's a subtle difference in many people's minds, but it really is impactful because you can actually spend time with it and enjoy the actual experience of reading this on your screen.
So keep an eye out in your email for that issue, or you can always find it on BizBash.com.
Fantastic, Beth. Till next time.
See you back in New York.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter @GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on. If you are looking for a state-of-the-art learning management system, take a look at Digitel's newest platform, Opus DX. Opus DX offers the robust platform for event organizers and associations to manage content. To learn more and schedule a demo, email them at contactus@digitelinc.com. That's contact us at digitellinc.com.